Welcome back, my dear students. In this video, let's take a look at updating lifecycle method. That's a method called when a component is being re-rendered because of change to either prop or state. We will go through them in the order they are invoked. We have a total of 5 methods, but out of 5, 3 falls into categories of rarely used method. We will go through all of them. The first method we are familiar with. This is a static get-derived state from props, which take 2 parameters. We say this is a static state method which receives props and states as a parameters and has to return either null or an object that represent the updated states of the component. This method is called every time a component is re-rendered. As we have discussed, this method is used when the state depends on the props of the component. What you should not do is to cause side effect. For example, HTTP request. The second method is should component update. This method takes 2 parameters also, next props and next states. This method receives the updated props and states, and the purpose of this method is clear from its name. Dictate if the component should re-render or not. By default, all class components will re-render whenever the props they receive or states change. This method can prevent that default behavior by returning false. This method existing as a performance optimization. What you should not do is to call side effect. Example, request calling a setState method. This also is a rarely used method as classified in React documentation. The third method is also familiar, which is render method. Is the only required method in a class component. Ready props and states and return JSX, which describe the UI. What you should not do here, do not change the state or interact with the DOM or make any AJAX calls. The fourth method is get snapshot before update. This method accepts previous prop and previous state as its parameter, and it's called right before the changes from the virtual DOM are to be reflected in the DOM. This is also a rarely used method. You will use this method to capture some information from DOM. Example, scrolling position. This use case is not common, but it may occur in UI like a chat thread that need to handle scroll position in a special way. This method will either return null or return a value. Returned value will be passed as a third parameter to the next method. The last method is component DD update. This method will be called after the render is finished in the render cycle. From the get snapshot before updating method. What you can do is call side effect. Means you can make an AJAX call, but before making a call, you have to compare the previous prop with the new props and then decide whether to make an AJAX call or not. As we have gone all 5 methods and what can and can't, let's get to VS Code and see their order of execution. Now, we are going to reuse the component that we created in a previous time. Therefore, when we see here, we saw we have get derived state from props. That is one among of the method in updating lifecycle method, and also return. So we are going to write the rest of the 3 methods. The first one was should component update. We said this one takes 2 parameters. We have next props and we have next state. Okay, and this one here should return true. We are going to return true from here, but before returning we are going to console okay. The second is get a snapshot before update. This will return false, and now we are going to log and here where they have got return now we have 2 parameters. Okay, now the last one sorry, is component did update. Component did update. Okay, we log this take 3 parameters. Okay, now this one also will return null. I'm going to copy the whole 3 method here and paste it to lifecycle B. Yeah, component, and we are going to change this one lifecycle A to lifecycle B. Now, after that, now to trigger an update lifecycle, we need to change either the prop or a state. Okay, so here inside of our return statement, we are going to add a button. We are going to add a button here, and this button will display change state. Okay, and inside here we are going to have on click listener. Okay, it is going to have this method change state. You can write anything, so I'll take this method here and equals to event or arrow function, and inside here we're going to write this dot set state, then here write name, and here I'm going to write code x 2020. You can write anything you wish. Okay, after writing so, now let's go back to a browser and see what has happened. So this is a browser. Let's close it here and I'll refresh the browser. Okay, we'll go to inspect. Okay, to console. Sorry. Now, before we change the state here, we see this is what we learned in a previous lesson. Okay, we have Lifecycle constructor, Lifecycle get derived state from props. We have render. After render, then it goes again to componenting. Lifecycle component B. Okay, it has constructor, get derived state from props, and its render. Then it finishes with the Lifecycle B, and lastly with the parents component A. Now let us clear here and click change state. Okay, now we see here the order of execution start with the Lifecycle A, get derived state from props, then Lifecycle A should component update, then it's render. After render, it goes to Lifecycle B components, then it display again the UI, get derived state from props, should component D update, and it will render again. Then it goes to Lifecycle B, get snapshot before update, then it goes to to component A, get snapshot before update. It will finish up with component B, which is the child component of the parent component A with component D mount, and lastly it will end with the Lifecycle A with the component D mount. Now the component D mount, the component did update, sorry, and render. These are the methods that we are going to use it much. The other one here are rarely used, and when you need to use it, you have to be sure of what you are doing. Now let's go back and see the other remaining two methods. This method is invoked immediately before a component is unmounted and destroyed. Okay, it is the method you can perform some cleanup tasks like canceling any network request, removing any handlers, canceling and any subscription, and also invalidating timer, example from set timer out or set intervals. What you are not supposed to do in this phase, do not call the state method. The last is error handling phase. This phase has two methods. It has a static get derived state method, and it has component did catch method. The first method has one parameter, error, and the second one has two parameters, which is error and info. When there is an error, this method is called when there is an error either during rendering in Lifecycle method or in the constructor of any child component. We will discuss this in the future when we learn a concept called error bounding in React. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.